Okay, our final unit circle video. We're going to talk about that second, third, and fourth quadrant. So we're going to talk about using our unit circle to find values. You're probably going to want to take notes in your spiral for this one because we're going to do some examples. So we're going to use those reference angles to find the values that are in other quadrants. We're going to use them for first quadrant too, but first quadrant's very obvious because it's positive, positive, and the angle's just right there for you. So we're going to start by finding the measure of the reference angle. Then we're going to decide which trig function we're using, so whatever it's asking for, remembering that x is cosine, y is sine, and then tangent is y over x. And then we'll talk about the other trig functions in a minute, and then adjust the sign if needed. So remember that when you go to the left, it's negative for your x value. When you go down, it's negative for your y value, okay? So we're just going to actually jump right in and start with an example because I think that that's going to be the easiest thing to do. So we're going to look at sine of 150. So on my triangle here, this is 150 right here, okay? Now, if you've done a good job of color coordinating and all of that good stuff, sine of 150, you see right away that your reference angle is 30, right? So you see that sine is going to be 1/2 because it's your y value, right? And because you went up, it's going to be positive. So for this one, our reference angle was 30 degrees. Just kind of toss that off to the side there. Sine of 30 is 1/2. Since we're in the second quadrant, it's going to stay positive. Okay? Now, let's do tangent of 300. Actually, let's do cosine of 225 first, just because it's going to be more direct. So cosine of 225. So we're going to find 225. It's right here. Okay? That has a reference angle of 45 degrees. So we know that our cosine here is going to be square root 2 over 2. We also can tell that because it's our x-coordinate. Now notice I went to the left, right? Correct? I went to the left. So my x-coordinate here is negative. So when I do cosine of 225, my reference angle is 45 degrees, right? So cosine of 45 is square root 2 over 2, but because I'm in the third quadrant, that's going to be negative, okay? Now, let's do tangent of 300. So 300 is right here. Now guys, be super careful. Don't try and use that for your reference angle. Reference angle always, 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 100% of the time goes to the x-axis. So for 300, my reference angle is 60. You're going to get that basically memorized as you go through and do this. It's going to take some practice. And you'll be able to do it without having the unit circle in front of you. But for right now, just use your unit circle. Okay? So I'm going to use 60, and I'm asked for tangent. So I can come here. This is why we have this little chart. I know that the tangent is the square root of 3. But then I need to think about it for tangent. Tangent in our fourth quadrant. All right. Tangent is sine over cosine, y over x. So if I were to actually do that, I would have done negative square root 3 over 2 over a positive 1/2. That means that that one is negative, okay? Because it's in the fourth quadrant. So I went to the left, or sorry, to the right and down. So when I do my cosine, when I do my tangent, I'm actually doing this. That's why it's negative. Okay? Now, we have a little mnemonic device to help us. All students take calculus. When you are looking at sine, cosine, and tangent, those three, then remembering that cosecant is going to be the same sign as sine, because if you're just flipping it, Secant's going to be the same sign as cosine because you're just flipping it. And cotangent is going to be the same sign as tangent because you're just flipping it. In the first quadrant, all three of those are going to be positive. In the second quadrant, only sine is positive. In the third quadrant, only tangent is positive. And in the fourth quadrant, only cosine is positive. So we say all students take calculus to remember. In the first quadrant, everything's positive for those three, because I went to the right and up. In the second one, I went to the left. So the cosine is going to be negative, because I went to the left. And cosine is your x. And then tangent's going to be negative, because I'm going to do sine over cosine, so positive over negative. That ends up being negative. In the third quadrant, I went to the left and down. So x is negative, y is negative, which makes tangent positive, because you're dividing negative divided by a negative. In the fourth quadrant, you went to the right and down. So cosine is positive because it's x, sine is negative because it's y, cosine is negative because you're going to go negative over positive. Okay? All right, so let's take a look at doing some of the others. So cotangent of 315. That's the one we're going to do now. Cotangent of 315. So first I'm going to find 315. It's right here. Reference angle of 45. Right? So I'm actually first going to say, okay, I have 45 degrees. So this is me doing side work here. I'm going to do tangent first. So tangent of 45 is 1. See that? But then I need to adjust the sign. So all students take calculus. Only cosine is positive here, which means tangent is negative. Okay? And then for cotangent, I just flip that. So 1 over negative 1, which is negative 1. I know this seems confusing. You have to, it's not much work, but you have to understand a lot. I still have my hand painted there. All right, let's do another one. You're going to get it, I promise. Tangent of 240. So finding 240, it's right here. It's pink. So my angle, my reference angle is 60. So tangent of 60 is the square root of 3. So I'm going to just kind of off to the side. 60 is my reference angle, and it's the square root of 3. And then all students take, tangent is positive here. So my answer here is square root of 3. And you can't see that. I've got too many things circled, don't I? That's my answer. This is my work. This is my answer. Okay, let's do secant of 300. So first let's do our reference angle. Here's 300. It's pink. So my reference angle is 60. Right? Now, we're going to have to do a couple of things for this one. First of all, reference angle, how about I label a little more clearly, is 60. Secant goes with cosine. So I'm going to start with cosine of 60. So cosine of 60, which is your x, let's do it here instead, just so you can see. You don't need this, except for tangent, just to make our lives easier. Our x is 1/2. That's my cosine. So my cosine is 1/2. Now, fourth quadrant. All students take calculus. Cosine is positive here. So then for secant, which is 1 over cosine, which is 1 over 1/2, you're just going to flip it. 2. That's my answer. Okay. Let's do some with pi. I know this is going to be a little bit on a long video, but that's okay. It's an important thing. All right, 11 pi over 6. So finding 11 pi over 6. Here we are in the fourth quadrant. It's orange. Okay, so I'm there. So this time, instead of using 30 degrees, I'm going to use pi over 6. So my reference angle here is pi over 6. I want cosine. So I'm going to look at the x, square root 3 over 2. All students take calculus. Cosine is positive here. So that's my answer. Okay. Let's do sine, and then we'll worry about cosecant here. Sine of 4 pi over 3. Sine of 4 pi over 3. So I'm going to find 4 pi over 3 is right, where's my 4 pi over 3? Right here, third quadrant. It's pink, so 60. And I'm looking for sine, so negative square root 3 over 2. So I can actually just tell my if I want, I can just use my actual unit circle here, right? Negative square root 3 over 2. And that'll tell me my actual sine, right? Because that's my y value. I just have to be careful about doing that when I'm doing things like cosecant and stuff like that. But if I look at my actual y value, that does it for me. In fact, that might have been easier, like back here. I probably should have done it that way. Tangent of 240. 240, well, I'd still have to do a little bit of work there because it's tangent, but not much. Yeah, we'll do these that way. All right, cosecant of 7 pi over 4. So 7 pi over 4, I know that's 4 pi over 4, 5, 6, 7 pi over 4. All right, so cosecant is 1 over cosine. No, sine, sorry. Right? So my sine, I'm going to do this one without using the reference angle. I'm just going to go 7 pi over 4 is right there. So sine goes with y. It's negative because I'm in the fourth quadrant there. And I'm going to flip it for my, to get my cosecant. So this is going to be, I'm going to flip it. That's what this means. This means flip it. So 2 over, and then I need to rationalize that denominator. And then I'll need to reduce. So I get negative 2 square root 2 over 2, which is just negative square root 2. And you can barely see that. Okay? Let's do secant of pi over 2. We might as well go in order at this point. Let's do tangent of 3 pi over 4. Tangent of 3 pi over 4. All right, 3 pi over 4 is right here. Right? So, tangent of any of the pi over 4, because my reference angle is 45, tangent is 1. All students, only sine is positive here, so it's going to be negative. All right, sine of 7 pi over 6. So 7 pi over 6 is here. Sine goes with your y, so negative 1/2. And then secant of pi over 2. All right, so first of all, secant is 1 over cosine. So here, cosine is x. So this would be 1 over 0. Oh no! Don't you ever divide by 0. Secant at pi over 2 is undefined. All right, I feel like I got a little chaotic on that. So we're going to practice it. And then we'll maybe even do another second video there, just to make it a little bit more clear what's going on.